Hello and welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. Following the introduction of Bruce Dickinson and his success on Number of the Beast and Peace of Mind, Iron Maiden were the ones to watch in the early 80s, progressing and developing heavy metal from its British roots in the 70s into the newly established new wave of British heavy metal that the likes of Maiden, Saxon and Angel Witch were pioneering. In 1984, they presented us with an album boasting the same musical prowess as their previous albums, but with a maturity in the thematic concept and a developed complexity in their songwriting, arrangements, and musicianship. Powerslave remains a cornerstone of Iron Maiden's discography and heavy metal in general, blending intricate musicianship, fast-tempoed songs, and captivating storytelling with themes of ancient Egypt, mythology, and historical narratives. Joining me to discuss this album is my co-host, Mr. Felipe Amorim. How you doing, bro?
Doing great. I hope everyone is doing all right.
Good, yeah, we hope you're doing well.
Iron Maiden.
If you didn't, if you can hear us, we kind of told you already, but if you can see us, just look, I've even got the shirt for it this week, but the literal Powerslave shirt. So as you guys know,
how many Iron Maiden shirts have you got, man?
At one stage, I had 5 at once.
Right.
Now I've got 3 because I think I grew out the other ones. But yeah, too many. and you're going to get a little surprise as well when we get to a certain part of the show. But yeah, so Powerslave. So my metalheads in the audience, I love when we do the rock stuff. I love the 60s stuff. I love everything. But you know me, when we hit metal, this is, Laz is very happy today, put it that way. Let's kick off. As I said, we're doing Powerslave by Iron Maiden. Just some quick fire facts for you. So it was released on the 3rd of September 1984, recorded between February and June 1984 at Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas. I never knew that. I never knew they recorded it there. Genre is obviously heavy metal, but if you want to get a bit more specific, this would fall into the new wave of British heavy metal branch. The length of the album is about 51 minutes, and it was the label was EMI, and it was produced by Martin Birch. First of all, Felipe, I'll ask you, why did you pick this album? Because everyone might think it's me that did it, but it's not me. Felipe chose this one.
Can I tell the whole story about it?
Do it.
Right. This album was the only heavy metal CD we had at home. So my brother had this CD, and I was more into prog at the time and some classic rock as well. But my brother had it, and I was listening to it. And I liked it. I liked it more when I listened to it now. But at the time, they were about to perform at Rock in Rio, so in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And we bought tickets, not to see Iron Maiden, because we wanted to be at one of the biggest, rock festivals of all time, really. Because I think the night they performed was like 220,000 people or something
crazy
like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know which year was that, but it's about 20 years ago or more.
2001.
2001, so yeah. So the story is, so I put the CD on, track 1, Aces High. I was like, this is actually a cool song. Do you know what? I'm going to a heavy metal gig, and I might as well just, sing along to one song, right? Let's learn the lyrics. So I've learned the lyrics. I spent some time learning the lyrics for Aces High, so I could just shout them when I saw them on stage. I thought, that song is so cool. And it was a single. And probably, the most famous song in the album. I don't know, might be. But so I've learned it. I was prepared for it. And they didn't play. That's the story.
I feel bad when you tell me this story. I've been lucky enough to see them play that song live. But when you tell me this story, my heart just hurts for you.
There's more to it. As a classic rock fan, I've heard, right, that Jimmy Page would be there and he would perform with them, play some Led Zeppelin on stage with Iron Maiden. And I know they were influenced by him and Zeppelin. No, but he was just there to give them they gave him a guitar with their autographs so he could sell it, auction it for his charity. So that was it. So he met them on backstage, not on stage. So that was the other. So that was my experience with Iron Maiden live. I was kind of disappointed, but they performed a phenomenal gig, as they normally do.
But just not the set list you wanted.
Yeah. No Zeppelin covers and no Aces High. So it's all right. It's fine. I don't know the lyrics to any other song. I'll just be here. But okay, with that in mind, I wanted to go back to this album, listen to it. And I just remember liking that song specifically. So I said, no, do you know what? I need to listen to some heavy metal for the show. We needed to do an album that's heavy enough. And yeah,
What did
that
you
was my
think?
choice.
Why don't you give me your thoughts?
Oh, my thoughts.
Yeah,
Like,
sure. Unless you want to save it for later or something.
oh no, I'll give you my thoughts.
Go for it.
It's really impressive. It's phenomenal. I think the production is great. The sound is great. There's something about Iron Maiden that is the same with AC/DC. They have a formula, and their fans might not like when they go away from that formula in any shape or form. If they do anything slightly different from what they normally do, they might not please their diehard fans. So I think they're really good at sticking to that formula and writing riffs in a certain way, in certain tempo and vibe. And you can talk about the way they groove, the rhythm they play, the style of the riffs, the offbeat hits with the crashes and stuff. So there's a lot of elements in their music that are pretty much the same in every album. But every now and then, I think they have the ability, because they're great musicians, they have the ability to add some different flavors to the album. And I think this one has got more of it than any other Iron Maiden album that I'm familiar with. I'm not really familiar with the whole discography, but I've listened to a lot of stuff with you in the car, and stuff like that. And I think this album's got more of some prog rock influences, and even, in my opinion, loads of bluesy guitar licks. We can talk about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you said a lot, and I'm trying to think where to start first. But the first thing you said, I'm just thinking what we do. But yeah, no, in terms of the to get an idea of what's gone on, what I'll do is I'll just give a very quick history of heavy metal up until this point.
Oh,
guys,
nice.
Guys, indulge me. I never get to talk about metal, so you got to give me my moment here. Right, I will keep it short though; it won't be long. Right, so 1970, February 13th, 1970, Black Sabbath released their debut album, Black Sabbath, and they invent heavy metal, arguably with the first song, but the whole album kind of encapsulates that dark.
It's a hard rock album, but that's fine.
whole other episode coming from this. But do you know what? I don't entirely disagree with you, so I'll say that we'll save it for another episode. But I don't.
No, let's not have the argument. It is obviously
it began it. Whether it's
that's
full
where
heavy
metal
album,
that's where heavy metal begins.
At the very least, you can say it's the first heavy metal song, the first song, Black Sabbath. Then you could say that Paranoid 6 months later kind of was heavy metal if the first one was hard rock. Yeah. Anyway, 1970. The first 5 years is the first wave of British heavy metal, where you have bands like Black Sabbath, Uriah Heep, Deep Purple, Budgie, Atomic Rooster, all turning their hard rock into a slightly darker, more dissonant, more screaming vocals, more shredding guitar. That's what we're seeing. From 1975 to 1980, you've then got the second wave of the British heavy metal movement, which is where bands like, Black Sabbath continued, but they were doing things like adding sound effects, adding keyboards, adding piano into their songs. So they were sticking with what they were doing, but just developing it a little more. But then on top of that, bands like Judas Priest, Rainbow, UFO, Derringer, and even to an extent Thin Lizzy were part of this second wave of British heavy metal, where they were taking aspects like the dual lead guitars. Thin Lizzy were fantastic with dual lead guitars. And yeah, then from 1980, but from the end of 1979 onwards, you've got the new wave of British heavy metal, which, if you're to break it down into a formula, it's traditional metal. So everything I just said in those first 10 years, plus the influence from punk, like the speed and the aggression, and you've got progressive rock influences as well in terms of the intricacies and the complexities of some of these songs. So new wave of British heavy metal bands would be Iron Maiden, Tigers of Pang Tang, Saxon, Angel Witch. There's your brief first 10 years of metal and where Iron Maiden slot in. So in 1980, Iron Maiden did their first album, and they did one album a year until Powerslave. The first two albums for listeners, what we'll do is, we'll, as usual, any song we mention, including the album, is going to be in the show notes below. So you just click a link, it will take you to the Spotify, and any song we mention will be in there so you can listen along with us. I'm going to put a song from each of the first albums in. They had a different vocalist. They had Paul Di'Anno, who was a very kind of punky singer. And even Iron Maiden's first two albums, I don't know if you've heard any, Felipe, but
Yeah,
they're
the first
very,
one I've heard. The first
they're
one.
very punky, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's still metal in a sense. It still has that darkness to it, the lyrics, the themes, but the shouting, the vocals are very punky, and the speed and the aggression is very punky. Bruce Dickinson then came in on the third album, which is Number of the Beast, and I'm sure we'll do that. We'll get to that one day. And this is where they kind of changed, and they stopped being that punk metal middle ground, and they kind of just stuck it all into the metal. We're going full on metal. And that's it really. And then after that, 1983 was the Peace of Mind album, and they finished the Peace of Mind World Tour, took a few weeks off, and then went straight into rehearsals for Powerslave.
Interesting. So he was like kind of the new guy in the band. Well, not really. They did some stuff with him, but
well, the other note I've got is it's the first album, and I didn't know this. Powerslave is the first album where they didn't go into a new album with a new lineup.
Yeah.
So they had the same lineup on Peace of Mind as they did with Powerslave, which they hadn't done before.
Yeah, so they were tighter as a band, which really shows in the
and
album.
there were no one left, no one joined, no one left. They'd been on tour around the world.
They did the biggest tour to date.
Correct.
After, and I think it was still their biggest tour for many years.
The Live After Death tour.
Yes, exactly, and they released a live album, which is really good as well. Yeah, so it's a point in their careers where they have a solid lineup after, you know, they changed the drummer, isn't it, from the first to the second album?
Yeah. Nico McBrain came in.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
Yeah, and Nico McBrain is a really technical drummer. He's really good, technically speaking, and that means you can do a lot more. And you have a technical drummer in the band, a guy who can play different rhythms and different styles, even with a full range of dynamics, playing really loud and quiet if he wants to. If you have that, the whole band tends to improve quite a lot. So that definitely was a big change for them. Obviously, changing lead singer is a massive deal. So it's a different band, really is, with Bruce Dickinson, in my opinion,
completely.
The first album for sure.
Yeah, completely, because it becomes, you're right, it becomes a different band. Paul Di'Anno's vocals were very punky.
Yeah,
they were very kind of
I do have a question for you. Can you still identify any elements of punk rock in this album? Do you think there's still a little bit of it?
Do you know what? In terms of aggression and speed, yes, but I can't listen to a riff and say, "Oh, that's a punk riff." What do you think?
I see. I think so. I think for me, the
which parts? I'm interested to hear, because
I think every time they play I know the riffs are typical like metal riffs, but the way the groove is played with a really strong backbeat, and it's kind of, the groove is kind of raw sometimes. That's how I see it. I don't think it's when they grooving, I don't think it's really, how can I put it?
Can I give you an example? Because I feel like I know what you mean. I'm going to take you straight to 2 Minutes to Midnight.
Yeah,
because that is like the one note I've got where that the intro riff could be, to me, it sounds like a rock riff. You could have heard that from Zeppelin. It's kind of bluesy. It's not very metal. It's not dark. It's like a classic rock riff.
Yeah.
And is that what you mean? Behind riffs like that, they just establish that backbeat.
And sometimes you could, there is kind of a half tempo vibe before the chorus, isn't it?
The killers breathe.
Yeah. And then it doubles. Yeah. A normal, let's say, classic rock, maybe even some metal bands could play that beat for most of the song, I'd say.
Yeah.
That would, so when you play the double tempo really fast, for me, makes me think of punk. You know, that's what it makes me think of.
Good, very good point.
That's part of it, but it's the way they play it. I can't really describe it. It's not like, because there's something like modern metal, maybe even at that time you had loads of like a double kick stuff on the drums, and Nico McBrain never did that. He never used. I mean, I think he used a double pedal later. This is the Brave New World.
Yeah, well,
something. He's the only one who did something like that.
And if you watch,
so his drumming style is
Yeah.
It does communicate with punk, although it's not entirely punk.
I watched. I've got the DVD, the Flight 666 DVD, and you see him. First of all, he plays barefoot. I imagine that useful to drummers, just
That's
a better grip or something.
I don't think it helps.
No,
Not
okay.
for me, no.
But what he does is, what song? 2 Minutes to Midnight. In that middle section where it goes all quiet, and he goes da 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 dun da dun da dun da da, and he's doing the kick. He only uses one foot. He doesn't go dum ba ba bum. He does
which most metal drummers do. The thing with that, for instance, I don't want to get too technical with that. If you do the double kick, you have more power, of course, because you're splitting that hard work for two feet, so they both sound loud. When you play more notes with one pedal, then you have those notes ahead. They're less punchy. They have a different dynamic to them, so it's like this slightly quieter, and that's more punk because punk rock drummers would play everything with one pedal instead of two.
Yeah. Okay, it's interesting. That's
cool.
See,
that's that's some drum information for you.
Well,
there.
Do you know what? Let's go straight from drums to bass.
Yeah, please, because tell me about Steve Harris's technique.
Oh my god! Where do I start?
Again, it's very unusual, isn't it?
It is. So there's multiple things with Steve Harris, and I have to say he is my definitely top 3 of my favorite bassists of all time. Now there's a common misconception that people think he uses 3 fingers to do a gallop, so dun dun and dun 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 dun, but no, he doesn't. He does these because he said when he uses 3. He's so it was only when we were at uni studying together, I only found this out then because I didn't realize how technical he was. He's self-taught, I believe, and I didn't think he ever cared for something this detailed, but I'll tell you now. Of these 3 fingers, he said, these are the 2 I play with, I suppose, if you look at it like that. And he said, when you put them together and the angle he plays his bass at, this one is too short. So he wasn't getting the consistency.
Okay.
If he was doing 3 notes, he'd be going ba ba ba.
Okay, so the third one, if it wasn't 3 fingers, the third note would be quieter. And
he just said it wasn't.
You actually hear every single note, and he plays.
That's it. So
really
instead
loud.
of that, instead of going ba ba ba, he goes bum.
See, so I always thought he was using 3 fingers for
everyone does.
Everyone thinks that. That's
the irony is I can't find the video on YouTube, but there's a video of him walking down going, yeah, and everyone thinks I play with 3 fingers, but I don't. This little one's too short for me. I just alternate these 2. So that's the way. But in terms of his bass playing, there's so much to unpack, and it's really important that we unpack this because so much of it is important to Iron Maiden's sound. So I'll start off with the gallop. Now, the gallop, this is a rhythm, and for musicians out there, yeah, it's an 8th note followed by 2 16th notes. So
if you're in the UK, 1 quaver and 2 semiquavers.
A quaver and 2 semiquavers, yes. I'll take that with my little finger picking out. So it's bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, ba, bum. And that is the bass, BASE, of Iron Maiden. And that rhythm, their whole career has lived and died by that rhythm. And it is littered throughout the whole album. Right, I'll just do a few. So Powerslave, dun da da dun da da dun da 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 dun. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. All the way through, 2 Minutes to Midnight. The Killers, dun da da dun da da, all the demons, dun da da dun da da dun.
Yeah,
it's just there. It's the backbone of every Iron Maiden song.
Yeah.
Let's say 90% of Iron Maiden songs, they'll obviously do. An exception would be like Aces High, where it's just so fast. Like dun, 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 dun. But he does another thing there, where instead of going dun dun dun, he goes dun 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 dun. So dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it's a variation of
it is, yeah.
Man, we need to do a compilation of you singing riffs.
Just
I want a whole 1 hour YouTube video of that.
But yeah, that's the base of Iron Maiden's music. And so that, but where it lies is in the drums and bass, and so it's so important that Steve Harris is playing.
And you got to consider the guitarists are doing that with a plectrum. whilst
True.
he's
Yep.
doing
He's
with
doing it with
his
his
fingers
fingers.
is much harder.
So, but the common
Credit to the
misconception as
bass
well,
player, isn't it?
of course, where it's due. Everyone thinks the gallop was like Iron Maiden's thing, but you've got to note that Deep Purple did it first with Hard Loving Man in 1970. So, where next to go with Steve Harris's bass playing? Right, melody. And this is what was so important about Steve Harris and Iron Maiden at this era. His melodic playing is just fantastic. Just think about the Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Yeah.
4 minutes 13 and 7 minutes 35. If any listeners or viewers want to stop and listen, you've got the bass taking over the song. You've got it in the mid in that 4 minutes 13. It's where the guitar just holds a chord and the bass goes, it takes over it, and then after that, gone.
No, the same thing in Powerslave. That thing happens.
But with Powerslave, how beautiful is Powerslave, man? That middle section,
amazing.
Because you've got to remember,
it leads the band with the bass on that part, and then they go into the guitar solo, isn't it?
These were the songs I spent hours of my childhood playing on bass, and that part, the dun 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 dun, unheard of. You wouldn't have heard a metal band playing, or a metal bassist playing something that melodic whilst the guitars are just holding a chord. That's not metal.
No,
exactly. You know what I mean? In that sense.
Basically, you've got to consider that you've got two like virtuoso guitar players in a band, and you're going to give the lead role to the bassist in two songs.
Yeah,
like it's.
But then
it's got to be really creative to do that.
Absolutely, but then look at the duelists at 1 minute 50. He joins in when the guitars do the tough stuff. It's so normal for a bass player just to sit there and play the root note. Even him doing his gallop, but no, he joins in.
Don't you think this is one of the strongest characteristics of this album? The fact that they play rhythmically in unison, not the same notes all the time, but like they play the riffs so tight together. And you have the bass and the two guitars doing it really, really tight. I mean, there's probably more than two guitars because you can record as many as you want.
Yeah. So I haven't done enough research into this, but I would hazard a guess that if you look at the turning point, so nowadays in heavy metal, you'll have the bass playing the same riffs as the guitars.
Yeah.
In most kinds of metal. Whereas if you go back to the start, Sabbath, Judas Priest, excuse me, Rainbow, Thin Lizzy, the bands, those kind of bands, the bass playing is still, if we got a spectrum of rhythm and harmony, if you've got the spectrum of rhythm and drums and harmony and guitars, you'd expect the bass of the early metal to be here, sticking 75% towards rhythm, 25% towards harmony. But Steve Harris came in and showed how you can put it way more in the middle and split that beautiful rhythm, but also figure out the harmony and join in with the guitar stuff. Yeah. It's just absolutely incredible. So I want to ask you, I have two questions actually. First off, who would you, listening to this album, because this album I think is the best indicator, who would you liken his playing to? If you had to guess who Steve Harris was influenced by because of his playing, what would you say?
Maybe John Entwistle.
Okay.
Maybe Jack Bruce. Maybe Geezer Butler.
I've got an answer that's my own personal thing, and this is from my studies. I haven't heard Steve Harris say it, but from having studied both bass players incredibly closely, maybe you know where I'm going now, I just cannot help but hear John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin.
Fair enough, especially the more melodic parts.
Think about that Powerslave middle bit and think about John Paul Jones doing a Ramble On.
Or or
isn't it?
The Lemon Song.
Lemon Song, yeah, that groove, yeah. But it's incredible. I mean, I think that's it. And I think I've covered. The only other thing I wanted to cover on the bass playing is chords. Steve Harris plays chords.
Yeah.
And what you're not what you are hearing is a thicker sound, but you're not hearing anything special. You're not hearing anything jazzy. He's not putting an extra note in there to sound different. He's playing, in musical terms, the root, the fifth, and the root, which we know as a power chord. Now,
which is what guitar players do all
a lot.
Yeah.
A chord is whether a chord is major or minor is determined by one note, and that is the third note of the scale,
which is not playing.
He's not playing because he doesn't need the guitarists doing that. Leave it to them. He's just giving power with a note. And the best example I can give, if you missed him playing chords in this album, go and check it out here. It is Powerslave. There's that little break where we get the Egyptian part. And the other thing that I will mention quickly is this exact same section. It's fantastic how they do little counter melodies. Okay, so the guitar goes. Steve Harris goes dun 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 chords.
Yeah.
So
well, the guitar is playing one note at the time, and he's playing.
They
chords,
both start on the same note, and then they, the guitars go higher. Steve Harris goes duh, duh. Awesome, man, and that is metal as hell. Even though it's Egyptian sounding,
that brings some depth to the groove, to the riff.
It's amazing, isn't it? But yeah, the only other bass thing I wanted to touch on was to ask you: is Steve Harris the unsung hero of this album? You can answer no, because I'm a bass player. I'm biased.
You know what? No, yeah, I think so. I think he is. How can I put this? I think he's the one who really holds the band together, because it's there's a lot going on. It's a really clever album in terms of arrangement, structures, lyrics. You've got like an amazing singer who's one of the most famous voices in rock music, and you've got all of those things, but you need that glue that keeps everything together, and the band never falls apart. And I think the bass does that job, adding that depth whenever it's needed, and doing exactly the same as the guitar players when needed, and doing his own melodic independent thing when needed. So yeah, he seems to be, in this album particularly, the most versatile musician in the band.
If you answered no to that question, and that you didn't think Steve Harris was the unsung hero, my answer would be, take two songs like Powerslave and Rime of the Ancient Mariner. They'd be completely different without the bass, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
just completely
those two songs they have a whole section led by the bass.
Yeah.
Which is unusual in metal.
It is, and it takes charge. But like I said, this album and this era of Steve Harris doing his thing really could have been the turning point in metal, where the bassist stopped being close to just playing the root note and started getting more involved in the riffs. But it is amazing. What do you want to do? Any points you want to talk about, or do you want to talk through some songs?
I want to talk about two other individual members of the band. I mean, sorry, I'm not giving enough credit to the guitar players, but I need to say that one of the essential elements of the album, probably it was happening before this album, is the fact that Nico McBrain has its gigantic drum kit. So that brings him, because when you're playing guitar, you're playing the fretboard with like hundreds and hundreds of options for notes and different octaves and stuff. And a normal drum kit hasn't got that many different tones. So once he's got like since he got the gigantic drum kit with, I don't know, like I think he had 8 toms, the big drums in front of the drum, right in front of the drummer. So you basically have the kick and snare as the essential parts of the drum kit, the core of the groove. And then you've got the toms in front of you. He's got many more of those than most drummers have, and that gives him a whole range of sounds to choose from. So when he plays the fills, it's never boring, because he can use different parts of the kit.
Good point.
It's a simple thing. His fills are really strong. They're not like he never overplays, in my opinion, but he's really technical, and he knows how to choose which drum to hit in the right part of the song, and the sounds are never too repetitive.
Yeah.
And on the other thing I would say is Bruce Dickinson as a singer.
Can I just go back to Nico and just say a great example of him using that kit is at the intro of Powerslave.
Yeah,
because he does that. Am I right? It just goes from one side to the other.
I have a question for you about that. I just want to
you do your Bruce thing. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so Bruce Dickinson for me is at the same time, he is really technical and has a style. So that's the thing. So if you master your vocal technique, you might sound boring. You know, it might sound like a generic singer.
Yeah.
And he's got total control of his voice. At the same time, when you hear his vocals, you know it's him. So that's one of the best things
Yeah.
about the album. And he can sound quite desperate at some points, like, you know, he's really going for the lyrics and feeling the meaning of the lyrics. And I think that's absolutely amazing. So what I want to say about that about what song did you say? Was it Powerslave? It
Powerslave.
starts, yeah. Powerslave starts with the drum fill. Question for you is: do you think there's any influence from Rush?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that kind
undoubtedly.
of
Yeah.
drums, that drum sound, and that kind of descending drum fill from a really high pitched drum to a lower one at that speed sounds a lot like New Beards to me.
That's a great point. And one thing that, yeah, the progressive aspect of this album is hugely important as well. Because one thing, so it's right from the very start, Iron Maiden had this idea. And again, this goes back to finding the DNA and the makeup of the new wave of British heavy metal. Part of that, you know, a lot of the aggression and the speed comes from punk, but a lot of intricate playing comes from prog. And we were only talking, what was the last episode we did? King Crimson, 1969.
Yeah.
So prog rock had been in full swing for 10 years by this point, before Iron Maiden even began. The best song, and it's from the first album, listeners and viewers, it will be in the playlist, is Phantom of the Opera by Iron Maiden. And you can just hear how different it is. Even in the first album, you can hear how much it stands out and how closer it is to this album than it is the first one, because of how technical it is. It's so intricate, it's so difficult. The vocal line and the bass and the guitar, they all double, or they're all playing together. It's a very intricate. It's it's very offbeat, very syncopated, very unique. This progressive aspect is creeping in a lot to Iron Maiden at this early stage. They went on it a bit harder with Peace of Mind. They sort of did it a really good job for Powerslave, but then it goes very progressive in the next album, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. So yes, in answer to your question, undoubtedly, I think that, you know, with a kit that big, someone must have been like, you know, listening to Neil Peart and you know, doing his thing. But
Would you
very
say
much
that
in the
the Seventh Son
instrumentation.
is their most prog album? That's what I've heard from some Iron Maiden fans. The Seventh Son
Yeah, I agree with that.
is much closer to prog than what they normally do. And I think this album is well balanced. Maybe that's one thing I should have said when you asked me why this album. I think there's a good balance, because even if you're not a metal fan but you like rock music in general, there's a little bit of everything there. So
there is completely. The Seventh Son is more progressive. There's just one more difference for me, and that's keyboards. It's got a way bigger. I wouldn't say reliance, because the songs still do well on their own, but there's much more atmosphere, much more keyboard and synth holding down in the back, you know, whilst the instruments do their thing. That's the only way I'd say Seventh Son tips to more towards prog than this one does. But you're bang on here about how balanced it is, and something about the balance is, as I said, it takes the traditional metal aspects, but it also sort of works in some of the punk stuff and also the progressive side. Now, of the traditional metal, one thing this album is littered with, and that is just done so beautifully, is dual lead guitars. For people who don't know what that means, you can hear it. It's where one guitar plays and another guitar is playing the same, to an extent, the same rhythm, and to an extent, the same melody, but they're playing it in a harmonized way. And
just
that
like
means
vocal harmonies,
just like vocal
when you hear
harmonies.
backing vocal harmonizing
Yep.
with the
It's singing
with
this,
the lead
yeah,
vocal.
that's playing the same thing, but a different note, a note that complements the root note, if that makes sense. And all the way through, man, I mean, it's just incredible. Lost for Words, you got it at 2 minutes 34. The Duelists, you've got them at 1 minute 50 and 4:15. And I just find, Felipe, they're all just such beautiful, simple melodies.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this album, especially, is that there's nothing, you know, forget that the Duelists is quite intricate, and Lost for Words is an instrumental, so that is intricate in its nature. They're trying to show off more the instrumentation because there's no vocals, but everywhere else in the album, when you hear those guitar melodies, they're just so simple.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me of classical music, just how simple it is.
Yeah, it's almost like designed to be whistled or you know, sing along.
Exactly. Yeah, I just got there. There's so many fantastic moments in there. I mean, and dual lead guitars are a characteristic of heavy metal, especially in the early days. Anywhere between, I don't know, 1975 and 19 even up until the end of the 90s, that was a staple characteristic.
And one important aspect of that is to play them really tight together. So when you see them playing live, do they still have three guitarists?
They do, yes.
Yeah, and you see the three guitars doing that thing. It just sounds beautiful. It's like a small orchestra, isn't it? I like that.
Yeah,
I really
it is.
like the way
it is. And they do. I mean, but there's some of them. Which song was it? I think it might be. Oh no, do you know what it is? Flash of the Blade.
Yeah.
You know that part with the hits, and you've got double dual leads because you've got. Sorry, go on.
No, and the guitar intro sounds very much like classical music to me.
Yes, so, yeah, and that's an intricate. But
so that's another thing in the album. There's you can hear classical music a little bit more.
Absolutely. With that section I'm talking about, with the double dual leads, you've got it's when the hits come in. So you've got and then the harmonizing one of that. So that's two guitars, and then you've got the guitars going wow, 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 and then the other one of that. So you've got four guitars.
Do you know what
double dual leads.
What I find interesting about that is, it's like they have an instrumental section in the song. There is not a solo. It's not a guitar solo, because a guitar solo is like a guitarist goes and does whatever he wants to do in the key of the song most of the time.
Yeah.
And you can, in metal, you can just shred all the way through, and it's totally acceptable for this style. But what they just don't know, we don't want to just shred. We don't want to just like play random notes. We're going to tell a story. We're going to harmonize it. So it sounds to me more like arrangements than solos. That's why I really
great
like
point. It. It's playing for the song.
It's not a solo because you're not even playing on your own, isn't it? Can't be considered a solo.
Yeah, it's for the song. Now, something you mentioned at the start that I wanted to touch on, and it applies to Flash of the Blade and Rime of the Ancient Mariner, hits, which is quite unusual in metal. So in Flash of the Blade, you've got the and in Rime of the Ancient Mariner, you've got isn't she life and death? They throw the dice at the crew. Is the mariner data? That's bluesy, man. Blues do hits. And you mentioned at the start of the episode something about blues. So why don't you take it away and talk a bit about blues in this album?
The bluesy part of it that I noticed is some of the bends on the guitar, some of the phrasing. If you slow it down, you can hear even a little bit of Freddie King in it.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I'm sure there is some influence of classic blues in that. And also all the times that they slow down and they play the quiet proggy kind of parts. The guitar is more about feeling than technique or loads of notes, which is more characteristic of metal. You're normally impressed by guitar players in metal when they play fast. And in this case, they don't do that all the time. So that you have some bends and some choices of notes that sound very, very bluesy to me. If I put any notes to any specific songs, I think, well, it's here. So, 2 Minutes to Midnight, the guitar solo. There's a bluesy approach to it. Yeah.
That's a great point.
Tempo for the second part,
and I think even I'm not entirely sure the background of Dave Murray and Adrian Smith, but I'd be from my limited knowledge of the guitar, but from what I've read and heard, I think they are quite bluesy players, as in they often stick to pentatonic scales. You've got people like Ritchie Blackmore, who 5 years before this was doing his thing with Rainbow, sticking all sorts of classical scales in there. He was a very neoclassicist. He loved the classical music, so he would put in anything you can guess. Having said that, though, I did look in Powerslave. They are playing an A Phrygian
harmonic minor, isn't it?
It's from a harmonic minor. Yes, I think the whole song's in D harmonic minor, but they're playing a particular mode, which is the A Phrygian dominant. Do you remember when we had to learn that in uni? And all the drummers were at the back, like, why?
I've learned that before uni, and I forgot, and I've learned it at uni, and I forgot again. So It's one of those
Useless
things, you know,
information
most,
for a
yeah,
drummer.
for drummers. Well,
Um,
should be useful. I'm just too
yeah.
lazy for that kind of stuff.
Now, what was I going to talk about? The one thing, do you know what the other thing? Going from chord 1 to chord 4, aces high in
Oh
the
yeah,
verse. Yeah, so you got moving to fire at the mainstream of bombers. Then it goes up. Bandits are chasing and moving behind
that's
them,
the
and back down
classic
to number 1. Bluesy,
fifth
man.
bar of a blues song. You know, you
Yeah.
play 4 bars on the first chord, and then you go to the fourth bar, to the fourth chord on the fifth bar. So that's a classic blues progression, isn't it? Interesting.
It's something I never.
Which is also rock and roll. They probably got that also from like early rock and roll. You know,
Yeah, no,
Chuck
that's
Berry,
fair.
Elvis.
I never sort of even dreamed. Yeah, you guys have to remember this is one of the first albums I ever listened to. Not just metal ever. So for me, this is just all I think when I see this album and hear it is heavy metal. I've never taken, because it's always been meant so much to me just as an album before I ever got educated about music. I've never gone back and been like, oh yeah, I hear blues there, or I hear classical there. So doing this has been incredible, man, because it's really just kind of opened up even just a new just a new
New
way for
avenue
me.
of
Yeah, new avenues
thoughts.
for me. Do you know one thing I did want to talk about was the pace
Yeah.
of the album,
Yeah.
because it's fast, isn't it? Check this out. The album, so 8 songs, an average tempo of 154 beats per minute.
That's the average.
That's the
Jesus,
average.
do you know what's the fastest tempo?
I had it Googled. I'll go and check it out now. But
Well, that's quite fast.
yeah. But as an average, like that's nuts.
Yeah, it is
Here we
really
go.
fast.
So I've got it. Is it this one? Yeah, I'll find my way through it. I'll click it when we're next talking about something so that we don't leave them hanging. Now, my question, and this is a big point I want to discuss. Why do you think, and I'll make an argument afterwards, why do you think this album isn't more famous than it is?
Well,
Why? Sorry, I'll make it a bit more specific. What is inaccessible to other people, in your opinion, about this album?
Oh, that's tricky because to be fair, I didn't even know that this wasn't one of the best-selling albums, isn't it? I don't know.
Well, no, you're right, but I mean, in general, Iron Maiden is still, oh
No.
yeah, Maiden, that heavy metal band.
Well,
Whereas,
I think as the genre itself, it's not them as a band. The thing with them is I think they never bothered being like mainstream or being loved and appreciated by anyone but their loyal fans.
yeah,
I'll tell you that because I've seen an interview. I don't know if it was their manager or booking agent, someone who works with. I think the manager. And someone asked him, so how did you guys survive all the changes in the music industry? Something like that kind of question. He said, I do not work for the music industry. I work for the Iron Maiden industry.
rock and roll.
And that
Love it.
Yeah. How rock and roll is that? You're gonna give me a number. Come on.
Fine. What did he say? I work for the Iron Maiden.
Yeah, I work
industry.
for the Iron Maiden industry.
Well, if a band's trying to make their way in the world and people are offering them help and saying, oh, you've got to do it this way, but he says no because he's all about his own band's industry, that's an 80 out of 100. That is rock and roll.
Well, it is insane. When you think about it, that means they understood that they were not for the masses, although they sell millions. Interesting, isn't it? It's like if you're not a music fan, if you're not really into well-written music, well-played music, if you just want to listen to all the radio stuff, then you're never going to listen to Iron Maiden, which is fine. And they never wanted that audience. They're like, we play for people who appreciate music. And as the guy said, is the Iron Maiden industry. So it's not the music industry. They have their own parallel universe. They do their own thing. And regardless of whatever crisis might be going on with the music industry, it would never affect Iron Maiden.
That's a very, very good point. And they've always, I mean, we watched several times when we were on tour, we watched that. Oh, you were with us. We watched that Flight 666 documentary.
Great
I
documentary.
yeah, I forgot.
Watch that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And they are just so efficient. Is that a phrase? They do it all themselves, and they don't need anything else. They've become a business in and of themselves. They don't rely on anyone else.
Yeah, and it's like, well, we need to have our own airplane, and maybe the lead singer can fly it, just we can get to every place where we need to be.
Little did
when we want to.
Yeah, little did Steve Harris know when Bruce was auditioning in 1982 that the pilot section on his CV would come in handy.
Exactly.
But I want to argue. I want to present an argument to you, because something that has struck me, it's almost shocked me, because again, this album, one of the first I've ever heard. I've never gone back and analyzed it. Just how accessible this album is, in my opinion, and I'm giving this opinion with rose-tinted glasses because I love metal. Agreeable chords and progressions for the most part. Although we said about heavy metal being dark and dissonant and a bit gloomy, I'm hearing these choruses, Felipe. I'll just go through the songs. Aces High, that's agreeable, that's pleasant. Live to fly, you know, major chords, fly to live.
Yeah, that's the song I wanted to sing along to. Yeah.
Sorry, am I rubbing it in now? But 2 minutes to midnight, anthemic, sing along, 2 minutes to midnight, happy chords, not sad.
Yeah.
Flash of the Blade, that's the happiest of them all.
Yeah.
Back in the Village, Powerslave, not so much. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, the chorus, it's a dark song, but the chorus itself is happy. And when I say happy, I mean you're hearing major chords, you're not hearing chords or notes that are, not working with each other. Bruce is singing, apart from, the odd scream here and there, he is enunciating his words perfectly. He's singing almost classically.
Yeah, to the point. One thing I noticed in that song, Back in the Village, that is I want to listen back to it when I have the chance, because there's a really interesting rhythmic effect with the vocals. He sings like some long notes on top of a fast groove, so it makes you feel like the melody is slower than the song,
because it's over
because it's just the notes are long, so it takes longer for him to develop the whole phrase, the whole line. So he's singing long notes on top of a fast groove. So it's like, it does sound like he's slower. But as I said, you can hear every single word.
Are you talking about the chorus of that song?
Yeah.
I think
I don't know which part, because I've got
here
all my own notes.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's it.
But doesn't that make the song singier?
It makes it more accessible. Yeah.
So that's my question.
Yeah.
Why has this? Okay, I'm just going to give examples. Pink Floyd, a progressive rock band who, every other album that isn't Dark Side of the Moon is probably too much for some people, yet Dark Side of the Moon became the famous one. Let's go with maybe Guns N' Roses, a bit nuanced, every album except Appetite for Destruction, which everyone seems to love. Why is Powerslave not part of that? Or everyone's got a copy of Powerslave? Because to me, when I'm sitting here talking to you about it, apart from the pace, some of the darkness in Powerslave, the length of the song Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, I can't see why anyone would dislike it. And that's massive bias for a metal fan. But
I think
try and answer that.
Yeah, I don't understand why people don't like the same stuff as me. No.
I just realised how that sounded.
Everyone an Iron Maiden fan?
I just realised how that came across. But you know what I mean. But
I understand what you're talking about. I think heavy metal itself will never be will never be the music of the masses. I don't think it can be. I don't think it's designed to be. I don't think it should be.
You think Dark Side of the Moon is?
Well, yeah, Dark Side of the Moon is because it's light. The thing is the heaviness of it. Because I think, to be fair, even for me, I'm not a metal fan. I think you reach a certain level of heaviness, like Led Zeppelin. Some people already find that too much, or even AC/DC. If you go beyond that, regardless of everything they did creatively in this album, it's still a metal album. It's still heavy in its majority and fast.
The production.
So the other albums you've mentioned, they have slow songs, like all. So what you have is, like, in 2 songs you have a slow atmospheric kind of section, but not a whole song. They don't have ballads, they don't have slow songs, they don't have anything like that. So I think it's basically saying we don't need to do anything different. This is who we are as a band, you know. I think
Okay, I'll just
if metal
accept.
became something so accessible, it wouldn't be metal, would it?
Yeah.
Like...
I'll just accept that not everyone likes Iron Maiden as much as I do. Okay. But no, it's a great
they
point.
clearly haven't heard enough of it, right?
Well, I put a question here under my accessibility notes. I've put, does the fast pace put people off? And I wonder if it does,
surely.
because it's just, how can you keep something up for that intensity? And actually going back to it, this brings us nicely round. I found the tempos. So Aces High, 129, 2 minutes to midnight, 192, Lost for Words, 155, Flash of the Blade, 222,
wow.
The Duelists, 160, Back in the Village, 132, Powerslave, 137, and surprisingly, although not unexpected, Rime of the Ancient Mariner is the slowest at 112.
Yeah,
and
but,
I actually
but
made a
most
note
of those songs have more than 1 BPM as well, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, they change, or they'll go
so
half time, or
talking about the fastest tempo in the song or the average.
Oh,
tempo.
you're probably right.
Still really fast.
But
you know.
Let's talk about Rime of the Ancient Mariner, because
please, that is what a song.
There's a few things we can talk about. A few first points I want to get off. The whole base of the song, as in BASE, is the gallop. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Whenever it ventures off into something progressive,
so the whole bass
and
the whole bass,
the whole bass, the whole bass and the whole bass. You know, when the AI does our captions, it's gonna screw around with this part, isn't it? It's gonna say bass instead of bass, and it's gonna say bass instead of bass. So we just have to accept it. The whole base of the song is on the gallop. Whenever we branch off somewhere and go a bit progressive or go to that narrative section, we always bring it back to the dun 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 dun. And I actually love that it's the slowest song on the album, because that stability, that slow speed really just holds it in there, doesn't it? It locks it in. And no matter where else you go in that song, all 13 and a half minutes of it, when you get back to that, you're like, yes, I'm back home.
Yeah, and you have the bass leading the quiet part, let's put it like that, again. And for me, there's this kind of psychedelic 70s vibe on that middle section. And I find the precision of the harmonies, it's insane, the way they really lock into that.
And together. It's just sorry.
I want to ask you about the lyrics, man.
Okay.
Lyrics, yeah. Got any?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So the lyrics are it's based on a what they call an epic poem, because well, no, it's not an epic poem. It's a longer poem by a gentleman called Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and the poem is called Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Do you know the story?
Not the whole story, but I know just the start of the song, not the original poem.
Well, the song is most of the story. So for anyone who hasn't listened to the song yet or focused on the lyrics, it is a mariner, a man who sails the sea, who shoots an albatross that's flying over the ship or something, because he thinks, what does he do? He thinks it's a bad omen. So he takes the albatross, and as a sign, as a superstition, he wears it around his neck. But then the sailors, they're all like, no, you can't do this because it's bad luck. And then something happens. Again, I did read the poem a few years ago, but I can't remember how it goes now. But they go into unsafe waters, and one by one, the crew is picked off and killed. Not like by, I don't think it's like a spirit going around, and I think they just die of disease, but it is the curse of the albatross has come and is picking the sailors off one by one, and then it's just the mariner left. And I can't remember the last few lyrics, but something about a wedding. So I think he's on his way to.
So basically, he goes to someone's wedding, and he's telling this story. I've actually got it here because I found this just like
amazing. Go on, tell us.
So beautiful. The lyrics. So the mariner's bound to tell of his story, to tell this tale wherever he goes, to teach God's word by his own example, that we must love all things that God made. So basically, he's so grateful for being alive. After literally everyone in the ship died, and he's the one who's.
Do you have the lyric after? Because that's my favorite lyric of the whole song.
What is it after that? No,
I'll tell you. It is the wedding, and the wedding guests a sad and wiser man. So the wedding. So at the wedding now, because of everything he's been through, is a sad but wiser man.
Amazing, isn't it?
Isn't that incredible? What songwriting!
I really find this and it's such a great ending for an album, because one
Mm,
thing I found is the other lyrics that really fascinated me, the lyrics for Powerslave.
mm.
And can you tell me what it's all about? Because I want to make sure I'm not talking shit.
Oh, well, do you know what?
Yeah,
I'm
Powerslave.
a bit, I don't want to
Because
say
I think
this because I'm not.
it looks like he's a powerful man who realizes he's going to die, right? So
Well, no,
it's
I
not.
think it's about the gods. So I'm pointing at my
Yeah,
screen. It's
yeah,
but an Egyptian god.
yeah.
So I
An
think what
Egyptian god,
this man you're
but
talking about is an Egyptian god, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken.
yeah. But it sounds like he's powerful, but he's going to die. So, and there's a point.
Yes, the lyric
Yeah,
"slave
the
to the
point.
power of death."
Yeah, exactly. And so, and then there's a part where it says, "So bring me the blood and red wine for the one to succeed me, for he is a man and a god, and he will die too." So that
There you go.
song for me is about mortality. It's about the fact it doesn't matter how powerful you are, you will die like
Yeah,
everyone else. And
amazing.
that's such a great thing
But
to
they,
put in lyrics. So which is kind of sad the way they put it. Like it's a bit of a desperate man thinking like, I have power, I'm a god,
mm,
but I will die. And
yeah.
it's like, and I don't know if he's a god or actually like a king,
Well, I
right?
could be.
That's how it,
I feel like maybe, and I apologize if I'm wrong. You
yeah.
might have read some wrong lyrics because I think it says, "For he is a man, not a god, and he will die
Oh,
too."
sorry.
No, no, you
Yeah, it
might
says
be
"and the
right.
God." No, because that's from Spotify. I don't know if they
So
got it
you're
right
so
or
I just assume Spotify's correct. So
yeah,
yeah, maybe my interpretation was as you said.
yeah,
That you can be the most powerful man in the world. I always imagined that we're talking about the pharaohs of Egypt
yeah,
because of the
yeah.
album cover.
Well, that's
So
the
you're
album
saying
cover.
to me that you got this pharaoh, he's got all the wealth, anything, and he's ready for whoever to succeed him, but he's still a
It's gonna
man and he
die,
will die.
and
Yeah,
the person who comes after is gonna die too.
yeah,
So it's like there's sort of mortality
poetic.
unites us all, isn't it? And which is
Yeah,
a really heavy metal kind of subject,
yeah. Rock and roll.
talking about death. So I think what I found about this album is, uh, so you have the Powerslave, this powerful man who he's a slave to death. That's
Mm.
the whole concept.
That's the lyrics:
Like I
"Slave to the
rule, like
power of
yeah,
death."
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I rule over everyone, but I'm a slave to death. So
Mm-hmm.
how amazing is that? Like, so you think he's got slaves, yeah, but he's also a
Yeah.
slave to death, to something. There's always something bigger than you, right? If it's not a person, if it's not a king, it's going to be death itself. So it's pretty cool. And then so you have this man who's kind of facing the darkness, which is realizing the mortality is for everyone and he's going to die.
Mm.
On the other end of the story, you have the mariner, in the last song of the album, who is actually really grateful for being alive. So
That's
you
a
have
great
one
point,
man
man.
cursing the possibility of death, and
Yeah,
have one man being thankful for being alive.
bro, that's brilliant. And I'm a bit embarrassed here because my top three Iron Maiden songs, Power Slave and Rime of the Ancient Mariner, are two of them, and
All
I'd never
right.
even made that connection. So yeah, no, awesome.
Yeah,
That's a great find, man. Honestly, that is a
it
great.
sounds to me like it goes full circle. Like Powerslave is a song about death after a life of can I put it? Well, life of wealth
Yeah,
and power,
luxury. Yeah,
and the ancient mariner is after facing death, you survived.
he's
So
grateful.
after all the struggles, you're alive. So it's two different
Brilliant.
sides of the same
Yeah,
story. I would put it like that.
brilliant. Excellent. Did you have anything else you want to say
I
or talk
have,
about?
you know what I have? I have Felipe's short monologue.
Felipe's got one. Hold on, let's
Oh
do
my
them together
God.
at the end. I just got one more point, which
Okay.
is just to say that the influence and success and legacy of this album was
Yes.
huge for Iron Maiden because this is the album. And again, I said at the start, I think the fact that they've had no one leaving, no one new coming in for the first time in their career, going from the fourth to the fifth album with no band lineup changes and coming from a long tour, meaning that they had the time to sit and properly work on these songs. It solidified Iron Maiden as one of heavy metal's leading bands. And you have to remember, the early 80s was huge for heavy metal because the early 80s is when you have those first 10 years from 1970 to 1979 where it was all very constricted. After that, it showed anything could happen. You got doom metal, thrash metal, power metal, all branching off at the beginning of the 80s. But Iron Maiden, and for me, in my opinion, this particular album kept that traditional heavy metal feeling going, and it really did solidify them as one of the most important bands. This album got into the top 10 in 7 countries: Netherlands, Finland, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the UK. That's a massive thing in the 80s. Whilst you got glam metal going about, you know, ruining things for everyone. if you're a metalhead, no, because seriously, in the early when
Lars Unleashed.
I'm kind of regurgitating what other people have said, really, because that's why thrash metal came about, because glam metal became too popular, and you're like, and metalheads were like, what the fuck is this?
This is
what are you
so
talking
silly.
about? What are you looking at? So that's why people like, you know, the underground bands like Slayer and Metallica and Testament, they rose up because metalheads were like, well, I don't want to go and watch these lot, I'm going to go and watch these lot. And I think Maiden are a part of that as well, just another band that people were like, yes, keep heavy metal strong. So yeah, all good. Do you want to do your monologue?
Yes, I will, because you know this is very rare.
I get one once a week, so it's a bit normal. But when you
mine is always my monologue is always like a shorter version.
Perfect! I can't wait. Let's go.
All right. Iron Maiden put together a masterpiece of heavy rock that combines individual musicianship with solid grooves and guitar harmonies. The theme of war and death can be found in pretty much every song, but the whole journey ends with a message of survival and gratitude. Mortality, fear, and darkness are poetically sung by one of the most recognizable voices in the history of rock music. A few added elements of prog and punk make this album much less predictable than most records of the same genre. I would highly recommend this particular album to any listeners who want to dive into the heavier side of rock music, but are still not familiar with Iron Maiden.
Bro, it's amazing. That's beautiful. There's like one perfect paragraph summing it up. That's amazing, bro.
That's how I felt about the album, you know, and really happy to have listened to it a couple of times over the last week.
Now, before I do my monologue, there's one thing we forgot to talk about, and I'm just gonna change things up a bit.
What is that?
Because it's the album cover and the vinyl.
You actually got the come
Well, I've got something better. So
I know what you've got. I know what you're going to talk about.
What do you think?
Well, is it the drumstick?
Oh no!
I can't believe
it's downstairs. No, it's downstairs.
Oh, no.
Okay, no, I'll give you the shout out because it's the best, one of the best gifts anyone's ever given me. Felipe gave me as a gift the drumstick that Nico McBrain used at the Rock in Rio gig that day.
So that's the part of the story I didn't tell at the beginning, because after all the disappointments we had, like Jimmy Page wasn't there with them, they didn't play Aces High. Nico was just throwing sticks in the audience, and there was this camera moving about, and one of the sticks just bounced into the camera and just went like flying over everyone and just hit my brother in the belly. So I just grabbed it and put it inside his shirt because everyone was fighting for drumsticks. It was like, I've got it. Let's go. Let's leave. So that's the story of the drumstick. And where is it now? Where is it?
It's hanging up in the living room downstairs. So it's nailed up, sitting there perfectly. So I didn't forget about it. I was going to bring it when we did just an Iron Maiden in general episode.
We should,
but I've got this one. So the thing that's special, I mean, first of all, the album cover. I mean, do you know, this might be, and it probably is, my favorite album cover of all time. It's 100% my favorite metal album cover, but I mean, look at that, man. I just think to come up with something like that is just incredible. But this is a 30th anniversary limited edition.
Oh, look at that.
Which comes with...
You're showing off now.
A picture vinyl.
Oh, wow.
So that is the Aces High artwork that you can see behind Felipe. Yeah. And then the 2 Minutes to Midnight one on the other side.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah, I mean, man, it's not often we do shows of vinyls I have. So I had to show off this time. But we did, I had King Crimson last time, didn't I? So
yeah,
it's becoming a bit of a theme. Or maybe that's
why not?
Picking these albums. But yeah, anyway, fantastic. Right, well, we'll finish up with my monologue then. But you didn't actually say what you thought about the album cover. Did you like it?
I loved it. I loved it. I think
It's
it's
so
got the
striking,
yeah.
isn't it?
It is. It is. All the album covers are great, but this one in particular,
Yeah.
yeah, this
Cool.
one is really really cool.
Excellent. Right. I'll do you my monologue, and it's actually you don't believe it. It's not my longest one, so yeah, we'll get through it.
Go.
So, as most of you know, heavy metal is my favorite genre, and for me, there are only a handful of albums that I feel encapsulate metal perfectly from start to finish. Powerslave is one of them because it takes, excels, and enhances everything that Iron Maiden and metal in general had done up to that point. You've got stunning melodies being battled out between the dual lead guitars in nearly every song, with beautiful, simplistic motifs harmonizing with each other. You've got eccentric, progressive, and intricate solo sections, like the middle part of 2 Minutes to Midnight and the middle part of Powerslave, where dynamics and tones are switched up and played around with to take the songs to the next level, as well as the solos themselves being complex and difficult to play, yet so nice to listen to. You've got blistering pace throughout with an average tempo of 154 beats per minute, each song full of energy and speed, really creating a simple yet effective sense of excitement that hurtles you through the album. You've got standout individual performances that don't quite qualify as virtuosic, but has each member doing their job superbly. Powerful vocals, stunningly versatile bass, great guitar tones, riffs and solos, and excellently consistent drumming. You've got artwork that is so visually striking and powerful, yet so different from their other. It's possibly my favorite album artwork of all time, and it's one of those pieces of art that I symbiotically associate with each song, enhancing and making the experience even better. Now, for the most two important points, you've got accessibility in agreeable chord progressions, sing-along melodies, anthemic choruses, simple rock riffs like the 2 Minutes to Midnight, with a lot of consonant and agreeable sounding music. But you've then also got darkness and metalness coming through in the lyrical themes, certain musical passages like the verse of Flash of the Blade, certain scales chosen like Powerslave and 2 Minutes to Midnight, heavy tone of the guitars and the drums, and the fast jarring pace of the songs. And this is what for me makes the album so good and so rock and roll. The complete freedom to explore these almost contradictory musical characteristics, but structure them and piecing them together in a way that just works so well. It's a hugely significant album for Iron Maiden. It truly feels like they cemented their sound and their style properly with this album. It contains 2 out of my 3 favorite Iron Maiden songs, and there are easily 3 or 4 others from Powerslave that could make my top 10. It's a cornerstone album in heavy metal history and deserves to be celebrated as such.
Well said.
Lovely. And with that
Amazing.
comes to the end of another episode. We hope you've enjoyed being with us today. Felipe, any last points, or are you all good?
Just please follow, subscribe, give a like, and all the virtual things that you're supposed to do when you like something.
He did my job for me. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you know all the thing. You know the drill. Every person presenting any online show is going to be saying, "Well, you click on that button here or there." You know, all the online stuff that's going to make the algorithm likes us a little bit more, because the algorithm loves us anyway because we're really handsome. But yeah, so just click on whatever you need to click and share and comment and give us 5-star reviews, please. No, not 4.5. Give us a proper 5-star review. Trustpilot and whatever.
Hold on, well, no, we're not providing a service. Wait, don't do us on TripAdvisor, please. Not TripAdvisor.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah, Google reviews or whatever. Anyway, thanks for being with us. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
I echo everything you said, but keep it to Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. That will help us most. You can give us an Airbnb review if you want. But anyway, right, you take care, guys. We'll see you next time, and as usual, long live rock and roll.